Welcome everyone, my name is Joe Cooper and I'm a colleague of your instructor for the week. Let's have a look at the VMware learning platform and your lab environment. It starts with an email that you received over the last couple of days, maybe even just this morning. And in this email that is titled VMware Learning Platform Class Started, you should have a link. Now this link takes you right into our web-based lab environment, and it embeds an access token, so it doesn't require you to log in. Let's have a look at what happens when we click this link. It starts up our lab environment. Now, the first thing that I'm going to recommend for you is that you have a nice high resolution screen. But if you don't quite have enough room for your lab environment and the console that is popping up now to show you a nice big screen for you to work within, I'll give you some tips and tricks. All right, but let's start by having a look at this. Now, some classes have multiple lab environments embedded, which means you would have gotten multiple emails. Check with your instructor to make sure that you've clicked on the right email by asking them, hey, what is the title of this lab kit that we're supposed to be working on right now? You'll see the title of that lab kit right up at the top. In this case, we're working with our Optimize and Scale class for vSphere, but you may have signed up for a different class. So the window here is made up of three major sections. On the left-hand side, you have a list of the systems that make up the primary level of your lab environment. I want you to focus on this one that says student-A-01. Your instructor might refer to this as the student desktop. This is the VM that you're going to be running all of your labs from. This is where you'll launch your browser from, for example. Now you've got your main console window in the center, and you've got your lab manual on the right-hand side. I'm going to go ahead and collapse the consoles to give us as much room as possible for our console. Now, if you find that when you open up a browser, for example, that you don't quite have enough room to do things like display a vSphere client or use an SSH session through MT-PuTTY, you can grab the bottom corner of this console window to resize, and the lab window will resize accordingly. So stretch this out nice and big for you so you've got lots of room. Now let's move over here to the lab manual. The lab manual is going to have lots of different pages, and your course is broken up into lots of different labs. And you're going to see those labs on the table of contents right here. Okay. Now, each of these labs are made up of multiple tasks, but your instructor will tell you what lab you are working on at the time. Please don't go beyond where your instructor has told you. I'm going to skip here to lab number 1. Now, in this case, lab number 1 is made up of 7 tasks in this Optimize and Scale class. And every lab starts off with a title page. This is lab 1. Okay? And as we move back and forth between the pages, you'll see that the next page takes you to an objectives and tasks list. In this case, again, it lists the 7 tasks and what you're going to be doing. What that tells me is the next 7 pages of the lab will have instructions for you. To task 2 gives you a little bit of a description of what the task is going to tell you to do. I highly recommend reading this before you move on to doing the instructions that are always found in the gray that are listed step by step by step. Doing this ensures that you understand what it is the instructions are telling you to do. I've had many a student that will not read this, run through the entire lab, and have absolutely no idea what they just did. So it's nice to read this sentence or two. It only takes a second to tell you what the lab is going to have you do. Now let's give you some tips and tricks on this. One of the things that you have the option of doing is moving this lab manual to a different device. Click on the More Options where you've got that link that said Split Screen, and it's got a URL and a QR code that'll allow you to open the lab manual on a tablet or a phone or a second computer, for example. That'll free up some much needed real estate on lower resolution screens. You also have the option of taking the lab manual and moving it to a floating window, or for example, there's the floating window for the lab manual, but you also have a floating window for the whole console if you like. Now, in this lab, it has me open up a Firefox web browser, and here's Firefox, and it has me go to vSphere Site A and launch the vSphere client, which I'm doing here. And it asks me to log in. So let's give you a couple of tips and tricks here for copy and paste. If you want to copy and paste from the lab manual, it simply involves highlighting the text, giving it a second for the little hand to pop up, and then dragging the text into the console. Now make sure that you've clicked the space where you want the text to be copied first. So I'm going to click here. Now I've got a cursor where I want the text to be copied. I'll come back over here and I will simply drag and drop. And there is my username. And I just double clicked on here, and you'll notice that it didn't highlight the last little exclamation mark. So make sure that you've got all of the text with no trailing or leading spaces. And then you can move the text into the next box and copy it in. So there's my nice login. Okay, copy and paste is really nice like that. You also have the ability to hit the send text button, and that also allows you to highlight. Now, if I wanted to right click and say copy, I can now paste here and send the text in through that. So this is just an example. I can hit the send button and it'll paste your text right there. There's a settings button that allows you to automatically select to intercept Control V so that the Control V will go into the console. You can select the language up here and a couple of other options that you have here as well. There is a button here that it says extend the time on your lab. Okay, this allows you to get another 4 hours of lab time, and you can do this in any lab kit that you have, but only one time per class. Your instructor can actually see what page you're on in the lab. Once you've completed your lab, move your lab manual to the first page of the next lab. That way it tells the instructor that you're done with the lab and that you're ready to move on. That helps the instructor to keep the class nicely timed. Okay, I hope you've enjoyed this. I think that does it for us. Have a great class, enjoy your labs, and I hope you're having fun at VMware Learning. Bye.